Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Watchbox Reviews. I would really appreciate it, and I promise to update daily. If you like this watch, you can see it and purchase it on our website, thewatchbox.com. And today we discuss a bit of a glitterati timepiece, both in its own right and in terms of the wrists it graces. This is the Richard Mille RM011 Felipe Massa, a combination of grade 5 titanium flanks and sapphire and white gold facing and backing plates. It's part of a family of brand-defining models, the RM11s, that bowed in 2007 and bowed out in 2016. This is arguably the Richard Mille of our moment, and we live in the moment of Richard Mille. So let's explore what makes this watch so appealing. The timepiece is shaped as a tonneau, but this is not the tonneau of Vaucher Constantin or the Patek Philippe Gondolo collection. It's not even the tonneau of Franck Muller. This is a Vaucher Constantin designed by an android. It is remarkably sculpted, architectural, almost like a technical exoskeleton. What it's not is difficult to wear. As you'll see, the white gold backing plate is cambered to trace the arc of my wrist. You can see the curvature of it, and I'll give you a better look at that in a moment. But it's not that big. From end to end, more compact than you'd imagine on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist at only 50.2 millimeters, and not as thick as it looks, though it is sheer. It's 16.2 millimeters thick. The timepiece does have a reasonable span from 9 to 3, but it's not the giant you might expect. It's 41.6 millimeters from 9 to 3, not inclusive of the crown or chronograph pushers. I mentioned the camber of the caseback, and I can show it to better effect from this angle, so afford ourselves a bit more light. See that curvature? It's designed to anchor itself on the wrist, and it does so well. Also, creating that cambered sapphire, expensive. Richard Mille not cutting costs, though. Everything is richly appointed. The strap is deliberately pared down and made flexible to minimize the span across the wrist. It doesn't want to flare or fight you. You'll note it is a bonded style strap to keep it incredibly slim. It's not even 2 layers stitched. What you will note is that it has a granular matte finish. It's supple, it's comfortable, and it's matched with a Richard Mille double folding titanium clasp. Note the use of spline screws both internally and on the buckle itself, which recapitulates some of the arc and bevel of the edge of the case. By the way, check out the maker's mark inside the buckle. That is from Richard Mille stakeholder and supplier Vaucher. You'll see the same mark on the case. We are going to explain how Richard Mille is in some ways almost like the ultimate modern day representation and embodiment of the ancient Swiss watchmaking practice of établissage, or the bringing together of parts under one brand. We'll talk about that in a moment, but first let's talk about this case. I mentioned it earlier, but we can go into more detail now. It is designed with titanium on the flanks, vertically striated, the crenellated or column-like forms on the side help to inspire the updated RM1103 model, but here they are constrained to the flanks, somewhat inset and channeled to give the case a three-dimensionality that it would lack if the flanks were simply flush. You'll also note that what might be the single most obvious occurrence of hand finishing, the only occurrence of a piece of finish emblematic of the human touch, is the bevel around the white gold faceplate and the backing plate. Almost everything else, including the movement, is rather industrial, and that by design. You will notice that the top of the plate is all of satin finish, and then there's yet another cambered sapphire. In fact, there are 2 sapphires. You can see the camber of the top sapphire from this angle. You can also see, and we'll get as close as we can here, you can also see that there are luminescent indices outboard on top of a carbon fiber composite tachymeter scale that doubles as a chapter ring and Rayhaut. Moving in, you can see the sapphire that forms the basis of all of the numerals printed on the dial, as well as the sub-registers for the chronograph, and note the use of a 60-minute chronograph register. I love that. That should be more common. There's a double-digit grand date with twin discs skeletonized and visible just beneath that second sapphire, and then right at about 4:30 there is a 1. That is for January 1st. It is an annual calendar with the date at 12 and then the month hidden between 4 and 5. You will also note that it is wonderfully deep, it is wonderfully open, transparent, and highly technical, with this appearance of technical facets and the machine brought from the inside out being almost as iconic of Richard Mille design as the tonneau itself. This dial is the very image of the RM brand. And note, flyback chronograph architecture, not just a chronograph, but and they leave very little to the imagination. It is a flyback chronograph with both triggers labeled. There's a polymer ring around a turbine-styled crown. It is a push-down. The watch is 50 meters water resistant. Still more spline screws on the caseback. They are present and correct inside and out. You'll note the movement. Black PVD is a Vaucher base, and I mention that because there's no getting around it. Richard Mille really leaving nothing to the imagination, leaving the Vaucher star visible just next to the balance. You can see that little star just under my finger. That's the maker's mark. That's the $150,000 watch equivalent of the stamp that says SW300 or ETA. And I don't mind that because this is a custom-built piece for Richard Mille. The plates and the bridges are all in grade 5 titanium, and the winding mass at center likewise customized. Ceramic rotor bearings, white gold variable geometry winglets, and then outboard there is a tungsten carbide mass, itself fixed by more spline screws. Why these mobile winglets? Well, they can be moved in or out by your Richard Mille watchmaker to alter their polar moment. The polar moment of the winding mass can be changed to increase or decrease winding efficiency. So you have the ability to make this one ideal for the desk dweller or the man of action. You'll also note that the skeletonization of both rotor and bridges allows you to see more of the movement than you'd typically see on an automatic caliber. The twin barrels giving it a 50 to 55 hour power reserve. It has 68 joules. It's adjusted in a chronometer like 5 positions, and it features a high-grade free-sprung balance, and I will show you that. You can see the variable inertia nuts outboard, and then you can see the free-sprung index. This is something that I believe became part of the Richard Mille collections in the RMAC-1 caliber that replaced the RM11 caliber around 2013 or 2014. I'm not sure when it changed, but the RMAC-01 replaced the RM11 caliber and introduced the free-sprung balance. You'll also note the thoughtful application of clear sapphires as the cap of the balance staff shock protection system. So whereas a violet pivot jewel for the balance might seem out of place on a watch with this kind of aesthetic and sensibility, Richard Mille and its suppliers have paid studious attention to detail. It does feature that hacking seconds function, the flyback chronograph. It's tough, it's shock resistant, and it's made all the more so by the use of lightweight titanium for the bridges and plates, the free-sprung balance, and there is an anchor at each of the 4 corners, and you can see this to good effect. There's an anchor at each corner that joins the movement to the case, and between the movement and the case, there is a little rubber donut in between the screw and the anchor. So each of those stanchions acting as a shock resistance system for this movement. So it is a very shock resistant watch. At 50 meters, it's swimmable. For surface sake, I wouldn't take this one diving. It's a full suite of complications, and with a Duboz Depraz annual calendar chronograph module on top of a Vaucher base with a Vaucher case, it is the greatest modern representation of the ancient Swiss practice of établissage. See this old school, new school watch on the Watchbox. Richard Mille RM11 Felipe Massa by night. See it by day on the Watchbox.